She was 81 years old. She had survived the death of her husband. She had survived cancer. She had survived 60 years of hard work, raising 4 children and building a life from nothing. But she almost didn't survive her own family. This is the story of Dorothy Mae Richardson, a woman who was drugged, deceived, and dumped in a nursing home by the people she loved most. A woman whose children stole her home, drained her bank accounts, and left her to rot in a facility 300 miles away. They thought she would die quietly. They thought wrong, because Dorothy Mae Richardson didn't just survive, she escaped, she fought back, and she took everything. This is her story. Before we go any further, if you believe that elders deserve protection, if you believe that family should mean something, if you believe in justice, then subscribe to this channel right now. We share stories like this every single week, stories of real people who refuse to be victims. Hit that subscribe button and join this community. You won't regret it. Now let's get back to Dorothy. Dorothy Mae Richardson was born in 1941 in a small farmhouse outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Her father was a sharecropper. Her mother took in laundry from wealthy white families. They had nothing, but they had each other. Dorothy learned to cook before she learned to read. By the time she was 12, she could cook a full meal for 8 people, mend clothes, 10 chickens, and manage a household budget. By 16, she had dropped out of school to work full-time at a textile factory. In 1962, she married Harold Richardson, a mechanic with gentle hands and a quick laugh. They moved to Cleveland, Ohio, chasing factory jobs and the promise of a better life. They had 4 children: Linda, born in 1963, Richard, born in 1965, Patricia, born in 1968, and Michael, the baby, born in 1972. Dorothy worked double shifts at the factory while Harold built his own auto repair shop. They saved every penny. They bought a small house, then a bigger house, then rental properties. By the time Harold died in 2009, Dorothy Mae Richardson owned her house outright, held 3 rental properties worth a combined $800,000, had $400,000 in savings, and collected a comfortable pension. She was wealthy, and she was alone. Her children had scattered across the country. Linda lived in Phoenix, Richard was in Atlanta, Patricia stayed in Cleveland but rarely visited. Michael had moved to Los Angeles and called maybe twice a year. Dorothy didn't complain. She had her church, she had her garden, she had her health. Until 2019. In March 2019, Dorothy slipped on ice in her driveway. She fractured her hip. The surgery went well, but recovery was slow. At 78 years old, her body didn't bounce back like it used to. She needed physical therapy. She needed help around the house. For the first time in her life, Dorothy Mae Richardson needed her children. Linda flew in from Phoenix. She was 56 now, twice divorced and perpetually short on money. She'd always been jealous of her siblings, always felt overlooked, always believed she deserved more. When Linda walked into her mother's home, she didn't see a woman who needed help. She saw dollar signs. She saw the house her mother had paid off. She saw the rental properties generating income. She saw the bank statements sitting on the kitchen counter. And she started making phone calls. Within 2 weeks, all 4 siblings had gathered in Cleveland for the first time in 15 years. They told Dorothy they were there to help. They lied. At first, everything seemed fine. Linda handled the grocery shopping, Richard managed the bills, Patricia coordinated doctor's appointments. Michael just sat around, but at least he was present. Dorothy was grateful. She was also trusting. When Linda suggested adding her name to the bank accounts for convenience, Dorothy agreed. After all, someone needed to pay bills while she recovered. When Richard recommended giving him power of attorney for medical decisions, Dorothy signed. He was her son. He wouldn't hurt her. When Patricia proposed putting the rental properties into a family trust to avoid probate complications, Dorothy nodded. Patricia had always been the smart one. Within 6 weeks, Dorothy Mae Richardson had unknowingly signed away control of everything she owned. She had no idea. She was too busy focusing on walking again. Dorothy's physical therapy was going well. By June 2019, she was walking with a cane. By August, she barely needed it. Her doctors were amazed at her recovery. She was ready to live independently again. But her children had other plans. One morning in September, Linda made Dorothy a cup of tea. It tasted slightly bitter, but Dorothy drank it anyway. Within an hour, she felt strange, dizzy, confused. Her words came out slurred. Linda called an ambulance. At the hospital, doctors ran tests. They found traces of sedatives in her system, but assumed it was a medication interaction. Linda played the concerned daughter perfectly. The doctors released Dorothy into her family's care, but instead of taking her home, Linda drove 300 miles east. Dorothy woke up in a facility called Shady Pines Care Center. It was located in rural Pennsylvania, far from her home, far from her church, far from anyone who knew her. Shady Pines Care Center was not a place people went to recover. It was a place people went to disappear. The hallways smelled like bleach and decay. The staff was overworked and underpaid. Residents sat in wheelchairs, staring at walls, waiting for death. Dorothy was placed in a shared room with a woman with advanced dementia. The television played game shows 24 hours a day. The food was bland and often cold. She asked for a phone. They said phones weren't allowed in patient rooms. She asked to call her children. They said her family had requested limited contact. She asked to see her medical records. They said she didn't have clearance. Dorothy Mae Richardson, a woman who had run her own household for 60 years, who had managed properties and raised children and survived more than most people could imagine, was suddenly treated like a prisoner, because that's exactly what she was. Her children had filed paperwork claiming she had dementia. They had obtained emergency guardianship. They had given the facility instructions to keep her isolated. And then they had gone home to divide up her estate. Back in Cleveland, the vultures were feasting. Linda moved into Dorothy's house. Richard took over the rental properties. Patricia cleaned out the bank accounts. Michael took the jewelry, the silver, even the antique clock that had belonged to Dorothy's grandmother. They sold one rental property immediately, $240,000, split 4 ways. They refinanced another property and pocketed the equity. They canceled Dorothy's pension direct deposits and rerouted the money. In 3 months, they stole over $900,000. And Dorothy knew nothing. She was 300 miles away, sitting in a wheelchair, being told she was too confused to make her own decisions. But Dorothy was not confused. She was trapped, and she was planning. Now, if you're feeling angry right now, if this story is hitting close to home, I need you to do something important. Share this video. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. Post it on Facebook. Text it to your family group chat. Elder abuse happens every single day in this country, and most people never talk about it. The more we share these stories, the more we protect our elders. Please share this right now, then come back and hear how Dorothy fought back. Dorothy had been at Shady Pines for 4 months when she met Carla Jenkins. Carla was a certified nursing assistant. She was 29 years old, a single mother, working double shifts to pay rent and put herself through nursing school. Unlike most staff at Shady Pines, Carla actually paid attention to the residents. She noticed that Dorothy was different. Dorothy could hold a conversation. She remembered details. She asked questions about Carla's life, her daughter, her studies. She was sharp, alert, and completely coherent. One evening, Carla asked a simple question. "Mrs. Richardson, why are you here?" Dorothy looked at her with tears in her eyes. "My children put me here to steal my money, and nobody will listen." Carla listened. Over the next few weeks, Dorothy told her everything. The fall, the power of attorney, the bank accounts, the drugged tea, waking up in Pennsylvania with no explanation. Carla was horrified, but she was also scared. She needed this job. She couldn't afford to make trouble. Dorothy understood. "You don't have to do anything dangerous," Dorothy said. "Just help me make one phone call." Carla smuggled a cell phone into Dorothy's room. Dorothy called the one person she trusted completely, her younger sister, Evelyn, who lived in Memphis. Evelyn Richardson Carter was 75 years old, and she was furious. She had been calling Dorothy for months. Linda had told her that Dorothy was fine, just tired, just resting, and didn't want visitors. Evelyn had believed her. Now she learned the truth. Within 48 hours, Evelyn was in Pennsylvania. She walked into Shady Pines Care Center and demanded to see her sister. The staff refused. They said only authorized family members could visit. They said Dorothy was under medical supervision. They said Evelyn needed to leave. Evelyn did not leave. She called the police. When officers arrived, Evelyn explained the situation. She showed them Dorothy's original ID documents, which she had brought from Memphis. She showed them property records. She showed them bank statements that Dorothy had mailed to her years ago for safekeeping. The officers were skeptical at first. Then they spoke with Dorothy. Dorothy was calm, articulate, and devastatingly precise. She recounted every detail: the drug tea, the forged documents, the isolation, the theft. The officers contacted Adult Protective Services. An emergency investigation was opened. 3 days later, Dorothy Mae Richardson walked out of Shady Pines Care Center. She was free, but she was far from finished. Dorothy returned to Cleveland in January 2020. Her house was occupied by Linda. Her bank accounts were empty. Her rental properties had been sold or refinanced. Her entire life had been stolen. Most 81-year-old women would have collapsed. Dorothy Mae Richardson got to work. She hired an attorney named Marcus Williams. He specialized in elder abuse cases. When he reviewed the documents, he said it was one of the worst cases he had ever seen. They filed emergency motions to revoke the fraudulent power of attorney. They filed criminal complaints against all 4 children. They contacted the FBI because the theft crossed state lines. They sued Linda, Richard, Patricia, and Michael individually for fraud, theft, elder abuse, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The total damages claimed exceeded $2.3 million. Dorothy's children hired expensive lawyers. Their defense was simple. They claimed Dorothy had dementia. They claimed every document was signed voluntarily. They claimed the nursing home placement was for her own safety. But Dorothy had something they didn't expect. She had Carla. Carla Jenkins agreed to testify. She described Dorothy's mental state during her time at Shady Pines. She confirmed that Dorothy was coherent, oriented, and clearly imprisoned against her will. More importantly, Carla had kept notes, dates, times, conversations, staff instructions to keep Dorothy isolated, orders to deny her phone access, everything. Then the bank records came in. Forensic accountants traced every transaction. They showed the withdrawals began immediately after the power of attorney was signed. They showed the children had coordinated their theft. They showed money moving into personal accounts, paying off credit cards, buying cars, funding vacations. One particularly damning piece of evidence was a text message between Linda and Richard. Linda had written, "She won't last long in there anyway. Let's just split it now." Richard had replied, "Agreed, she's done." The prosecution had everything they needed. The criminal trial began in October 2021. Dorothy sat in the courtroom every single day. She wore her Sunday best. She held her head high. She looked each of her children in the eye. Linda was convicted of fraud, elder abuse, and theft. She was sentenced to 8 years in state prison. Richard was convicted of fraud and theft. He received 6 years. Patricia was convicted of financial exploitation of an elder. She received 4 years. Michael was convicted of theft and conspiracy. He received 3 years. The judge, a woman named Sandra Whitmore, delivered a statement that was quoted in newspapers across the country. These defendants did not just steal money. They stole their mother's dignity. They stole her freedom. They stole years of her life that she will never get back. They treated her as an obstacle to be removed, not as the woman who gave them life. This court will not tolerate such cruelty. All 4 children were ordered to pay restitution, every penny. The civil lawsuit was settled in early 2022. Dorothy recovered $1.4 million. She got her house back, the remaining rental property was returned, the family trust was dissolved. But the money was not what mattered most to Dorothy. What mattered was that she had won. She had been drugged, kidnapped, imprisoned, robbed, and abandoned, and she had fought back, and she had won. Today, Dorothy Mae Richardson is 84 years old. She lives in her own home, the same home she and Harold bought 50 years ago, the same home her children tried to steal. She has a full-time caregiver now, a young woman named Angela, who treats her with respect and kindness. She still goes to church every Sunday. She still tends her garden in the spring. She still refuses to be a victim. Dorothy was asked once if she regretted pressing charges against her own children. She thought for a long moment. "They stopped being my children the day they put me in that place," she said. "Children don't do what they did. Strangers don't do what they did. What they did was evil, and evil has to have consequences." She paused. "I didn't do this for revenge. I did this so the next mother, the next grandmother, the next elder sitting alone in a nursing home wondering why their family abandoned them knows that fighting back is possible, that justice is possible, that your life has value no matter how old you are." Dorothy Mae Richardson's story has been featured in legal journals, elder advocacy publications, and has inspired changes in guardianship laws in 3 states. Carla Jenkins completed her nursing degree in 2023. Dorothy paid her tuition. Elder abuse is one of the most underreported crimes in America. Every year, millions of seniors are exploited, neglected, or abused by family members, caregivers, and institutions. Most never fight back. Most never tell anyone. Most suffer in silence until they die. Dorothy Mae Richardson refused to be one of them. If you or someone you love is experiencing elder abuse, know this: you have rights. Adult Protective Services exists in every state. The National Elder Abuse Hotline is available around the clock. Attorneys specialize in exactly these cases. You are not alone. You are not helpless. And your life is worth fighting for. Thank you for listening to Dorothy's story. If it moved you, if it made you think about the elders in your own life, if it reminded you to check on your grandmother, your grandfather, your aging parents, then please share this video. Share it on Facebook, send it in a text, post it wherever people need to hear it. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell. We tell stories like this because they matter, because real people deserve to be heard, because justice should never be silent. Until next time, take care of each other, protect your elders, and never, ever underestimate a grandmother.